And welcome to AI Afterwork, real AI for real problems. With this session, we want to create a very practical, non-PowerPoint conversation about technology. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am María Aperador, a criminologist specialized in cybersecurity. I'm also a creator of content on social media. I have more than 500,000 followers across all of them. So you can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, etc. Also, I am the founder and the CEO of BeValk, an app that helps people to not fall into digital scams. And I have written a book also, and I do a lot of workshops, conferences, and I do criminological research because my main goal is to protect people from manipulation and digital scams. So now, before we dive in, let me quickly introduce our speakers. First of all, Marina Palma, who is Senior Machine Learning Engineer at ADP, the global AR tech company. She is also pursuing a PhD in generative AI applied to medical data, and she teaches at university. Marina actually used to work at InnoIT, so welcome home. We have Matthias, you have to help me with your surname. Okay, thank you. Who is the CTO and co-founder of Artiso AI, a platform that uses agentic AI to transform fashion design from mood boards to full campaigns. Before Artiso, he led the data science team at Mango. Also, we have Miguel Toscano, who is data and AI specialist at Google Cloud, focused on helping organizations modernize their data foundations and build real AI applications. He's the infrastructure perspective that we have tonight. And finally, Àlex Rodríguez, who is founder and CEO of MarsBased, a fully remote software consultancy based here in Barcelona, bootstrapped for over 10 years. They have recently launched a new AI-focused line of business. And Àlex is also a business angel with more than 40 investments. So let's start with a quick round, okay? In 1 minute, each of you, what's the most real AI problem you are working on right now? Marina, for example.
Okay, let's start. So as you said, I'm working on background human resources data. So in my case, or in my experience, the most AI problem that we are having, so the most challenging thing that we are facing right now, is how we can leverage the most cutting-edge solutions on AI without compromising the privacy and the security of our clients. So how we can surpass all these security and privacy issues that we are facing, and we all know that some third-party models can have with trying to put our clients in the best solutions, right?
Let's go. So first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I hope you're having a wonderful week with Mobile World Congress. But yeah. So we at Artiso, we are actually working at giving our users control over AI in a sense. And what we mean by that is that they actually are in control of the situation. So I would say the biggest problem that we're dealing with is to find the balance between how much we control and how much we let loose the agent. I would say that's the biggest difficulty that we're having right now, to find the right balance without getting into the risks of it. And to be proactive in a sense, helpful to the designer in the process. So as you should think it is a co-pilot for brands, and it integrates brand DNA, user preferences, and feedback in the loop systems to always improve the suggestions that it does and the creations for the user. So in that sense, you can go, for example, you can imagine, I don't know how many of you guys work in or have any notion of fashion, but you go somewhere for shopping, so you buy something, you think it's a good inspiration for my next campaign maybe, and then I take a picture of that, and then I proactively give you suggestions how you could do reversions of that, re-inspirations with the brand DNA integrated in a sense. And so for us, the big difficulty is where's the balance that we don't risk, in a sense, our credibility on one hand, and at the same time being supportive. So yeah.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Thank you for being here. As Matthias said, it's a very busy week in Barcelona. So I think that around agents, AI, we are all like companies and developers and the different personas around this ecosystem. We are facing many challenges, starting for security, scalability, all these things that are not directly connected to the AI consumer, how I prompt something and I get an answer, or more in the infra or in the different part of the stack that are really important if we want to go to production with our agentic application. But if I have to say like the biggest challenge that I'm facing with different customers is how we can make data accessible for these agents, in the sense not only in security, that probably we will talk about it later, more on the accuracy. So the thing is that we are giving the agents a great power, that is generate SQLs to retrieve information from databases or from any data platform, but we, in terms of accuracy, we don't know exactly how there are different techniques to improve that, but there are work to do to reach the point that the same way that is generated the agent is provided the data that you are expecting if you compare with a developer that is written SQL. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing.
Hello, thank you for being here tonight. I'm really passionate about solving the unsexy problems in this kind of business right now. Let me explain this a little bit better. So as a software development consultancy, what we do is to develop bespoke applications for other people, which technically AI evangelists have been saying like, oh, this is so over, everybody will be developing their own apps. Go try it, just doesn't work. People are just burning credits on Lovable, Replit, and stuff like that for 100 euros in a day, and it just doesn't fucking work. So for me, I'm really passionate about trying to solve this, like context window optimization, how to teach people what kind of model they have to select for each kind of task, building orchestrators, optimizing costs and stuff like that, and above all, evangelizing AI in a practical way so that everybody in this room tonight would be able to develop their own app. So I'm trying to focus on this, not so much on the flashy things like generating crazy videos for Hollywood.
Thank you. What's one thing about AI in production that people consistently underestimate?
So I think from a user perspective, especially as a user, you only see the tip of the iceberg, and especially for successful agentic workflows or systems. At the end of the day, I think this sounds maybe a little bit extreme now to say that, but LLMs right now are almost a commodity. And what I mean by that is 95% of the work is context. And context in high quality context, how do you capture the data, how do you capture the whole workflow, how do you evaluate it, how do you have feedback in the loop systems to actually improve. And I think, so we're getting to a point where the average decision, I would say, is more than the LLMs are more than able to solve them. It's more, how do you integrate the right context and information for the LLM to take that decision? And I think that's the biggest gap that we're having right now, and that, yeah, people expect things to work, but they don't see the underlying complexity of everything working. And this goes for everything, search systems, everything. So I would say that's maybe the tip of the iceberg, that the user only sees the LLM, the flashy part, but not the whole work that's done beneath it.
For me, it's two things. One is cost control. As I mentioned, this is an unsexy problem to solve, but basically lots of, even developers and software engineers nowadays, they just throw the entire project into the context window. They just go tap, 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 and they think the project's going to solve itself. At the end of the day, the bill is freaking astronomical. The second, it would be that thanks to all of these generative AI platforms that you can build software with it, or even like IDEs for technical people, the stuff that you use to kind of like write code, kind of like Cursor, for instance. They're really good to get into 80% of the project in Pareto principle with 0% effort and literally no cost. But the last mile, it's still very fucking hard, especially if you don't know how to control the context, especially if you don't know how to kind of like create new threads and your way around so that the AI doesn't start to hallucinate or go in circles. selecting the right model for bug solving is not the same as code generation, stuff like that. That last mile can make the time to production go astronomically high, and therefore also the cost of the project.
Yeah, I agree with all having said. Just to add one more thing to the conversation, I would say quality. The thing is that with all this vibe coding, Hive, everyone with knowledge or with no knowledge is able to develop an app in one afternoon. And the thing is that those apps that might be in production one day, and if there is no one there that can, it can be a persona or it can be another agent with an LLM well trained. It can be anyone. Reviewing this, creating, testing for that code that has been developed. In the future you can have a problem.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I completely agree with the three of you. And just as probably as a summary, what constantly gets underestimated in developing machine learning models is the integration cost, for sure. Because as you said, what we always see is the flashy model, but at the end, what we need to consider is monitoring, like all the logs that we're running to it, access controls, data contracts. So a lot of stuff is going around all these models. Even humans in the loop are part of the model sometimes. So all this integration cost needs to be considered, and maybe model it's just like 20%, and yeah, maybe you can choose a model over another because it's 2% better in this specific task, but at the end, if your design system is not it's not well designed.
Okay, very interesting. Let's get specific. Where does AI clearly add value today? And where does it usually fail to deliver? For example, Marina, you have a very technique vision. So what do you think about that?
So right now it's difficult to think in a use case that it's not adding value everywhere in AI. So I would say that probably the challenge is more on how we consider adding value, because probably the first thing that we think is, okay, let's replace some system by AI. Let's try to implement this AI system that would replace this, I don't know, this full department of people. And I would say that let's start first on trying to enhance what we are currently doing by implementing AI, and then let's move forward from that, right?
So I think there's if I talk about generative AI, there's certainly traditional algorithms that could, for example, do much better. And I speak about, for example, optimization problems, forecasting, all of these cases. So generative AI is not the solution for everything. Many times now the risk is to just put generative AI on top of everything. So, and that's one of the high risks. Also, for example, for deterministic problems where you need to have same input, same output. Well, with LLMs you don't have that. Okay, so these kind of cases, but I think we all know that in that sense. And we're in a world of fashion. So fashion is very creative in a way, and creativity is in an aspect very human. And so what we're seeing, for example, is we're not here to replace designers in any way. So our thought process is completely different, because that's the high risk. Always when we talk with designers, they're always scared that we're going to replace them in some way. What we're going to do is a little bit like we do with vibe coding, and I think, imagine you all that are here at some point tried a little bit of that. And is actually vibe coding, I think, actually empowers us. It gives us a lot of power to try out new tools, getting into new systems. So we want to do the same thing with design. And I think at the end of the day, art in a way is very human in the strategic perspective, in taking actually ownership of decision making. That's something that AIs, we don't want that to happen. We want to have ownerships on people, and that people take decisions and responsibility over the decisions. I don't know if you have seen, for example, the bullshit benchmark, and this is a real benchmark, and this is actually how much LLMs contradict people's opinions. And what they see is that most LLMs, and when I say most, I say everything except Claude, is able to actually will always agree with you. So in a sense, then you see these kind of cases are very typical where LLMs will just do as you tell them and not contradict yourself. So I think, for example, now having a little bit the contradicting perspective, always being very critical as a human being is now very valuable.
Yeah, actually, I think it is. One more in this is you can. I think that all of us, when we are reading a post on LinkedIn or we are even reading an email, we can see clearly that it's often waiting for our line. I think that is something that we can all recognize. I would say, okay, I just wanted to share a story about this, how you can apply AI for a business process. And it's the typical use case, but basically I used it last week. I traveled to Dubai last week. So I tried to set up an eSIM in my phone, and I couldn't do it. I had a problem. So instead of calling, I started the online chat with the app. At the moment I started to interact, and the interaction, it looks very, very human, very, very human. After a few interactions, okay, I realized that it was AI who was behind, it wasn't a person. But for me, it was more like, okay, this is something that is different from what I used to, is that this agent was able to offer different options and take action in the different options, offering context and consequences. So this autonomous behavior from the agent inside the chat, and the chat is the typical example for LLM, I think it is super powerful. And we are getting there. It's not that we have solved everything with an agent in a chat, but we are getting there. And in not a creative process, it's more like a business interaction, let's say. I think that in general, AI is in a state that we can interface with, we can interact with customers.
Just two real quick examples. One of them is circling back to what the colleague mentioned about the criticizing or being contradictory of what you or being overly critical of what you do, or being non-agreeable, right? That's the word. That's especially useful when you have junior people in your organization, right? Because it's always been a challenge to train lesser senior people in the organization. Even more so in a hard remote company like ours, we have no office whatsoever, so it's not like we can be just coming over to your desk and teaching you how to do stuff. But most companies nowadays, they're like, yeah, we will just give every junior an AI and that will turn them into a senior. No, it doesn't really work like that. It's actually the other way around. You give a senior person an AI, they turn into a junior and much more expensive, right? So the point being is, if it was hard to train junior people, now if you abandon them to their own fate with an AI, it's goodbye. They're just not going to work like that. 1 in a million is going to work, but you have to put up like all of these, going there, challenge them, motivate them, coach them, tell them like the work is not good enough, because that's what makes them grow, right? Being overly agreeable with them, that's just not going to work. The other thing, what I think it doesn't really add value, is AI doesn't have taste. And we develop software, but we have to design as well, right? So for most software projects, design isn't really that important. If you're thinking about internal tools, back office, certain parts of the e-commerce, like certain pages that are always the same, settings page, remember password, profile, stuff like that. But in certain parts, certain designs, you have to think outside of the box. In those ones, AI just generates clones of a linear website. So you take a look at it, and what the colleague over here just mentioned, everything looks the fucking same. So we don't like that. For those specific parts, we do need a human touch. So on the one hand, I think it's good that AI is kind of like replacing this human touch in parts where it was not necessary in the first place, so that we can focus more 100% double down on where it actually matters.
Okay, Matthias, I see that you have... maybe you want to add something?
Sure. So, I mean, I agree with the perspective that AI, on default, does not have taste, or it goes mainstream, obviously, right? Like, I agree on that. But I would say models are now there in a point where if you give the right context, and they have the necessary prompt adherence to really be extremely creative in a way. And what I mean by that is, I can give you very simple examples. And for example, we have done some shootings, for example, with AI and everything, which is a very sensible topic. And the beauty of AI in that case is it's not for us that we see, okay, it's cheaper. Yeah, sure, it's cheaper too, like that can help, for certainly. But it's more like you can even express visual juxtapositions if you want to, that you could never do otherwise in the real world, in a way. And I would say there's certainly an aspect of creativity there. Nonetheless, always on the guidance of a human being. So I think there's always a collaborative aspect in that sense, but there's certainly an aspect where you can have a transfer of different perspectives in AI that come together to create new things. And I think that's something new that we didn't have in the past, where LLMs actually create new things that we would never expect to be able to do in the past. So,
yeah, I mean, if you're an expert, you can give it the possibility of actually coming up with text. But for the greater audience, mass public, they will never do it. Not yet, sorry, not never.
Okay, we are going to dive in the difference between the data versus models. Okay, so how often are AI problems actually solved with better data retrieval rather than better models? And maybe this question is for Miguel.
There you go.
Okay. I would say 90% of the time, and maybe it's even higher. I think that all of you, for sure, that you all know this, Arena and all this dashboard that we compare the model with parameters that most of us, we didn't even know what's the meaning of that. So my point is that most of the LLMs, the big LLMs, they have a very good performance in almost every single aspect. It doesn't mean that they are super similar, but in generic use cases, they work basically. That's one point. And the second point is that what makes your company different? That will be the answer. It's an LLM. What can make your company different? My opinion is not. It's your data, it's your knowledge, because it's the same with human beings. What makes you unique is that you are different from the person that is sitting next to you. So just to wrap up, so basically I think that it is like a projection of what may happen in the future. I think that now the hype with all AI models, by coding agents, all these like fancy words is super high, but when we are going to see in a few months or maybe in a year is that the problem is still in the data that you have at home. And if you don't housekeeping that, you don't create context, you are not going to be able to transform your users or your customers' experience.
Anyone wants to add something more? No? No? What actually happens when foundations are weak? Data, access control, or monitoring? And any real failure stories you can share with us?
I can go with that. For non-tech, I don't even know, like, who's the audience? If you're a technical software developer, engineer, raise your hand, because I don't want to get too technical. Well, it's got like 1/3. So for non-technical people, so basically it's 10 years ago, we would have the same question where it's like, if data is bad, but you throw good developers at it, can you solve the problem? Yes, with enough time and money, right? Now it's more or less the same with an AI model, right? So yes, technically you can do it, but one of the tricky parts of AI is up until now, or up until a few months from now, they have been largely subsidized by venture capital. And operations of big startups and tech scalers and stuff like that have been operating at a loss, right? When this is over, when the money and rain is over, they will increase the cost significantly. And so you will have to take a look somewhere else, because you will not be able to throw money at the problem, right? And so you will have to do some housekeeping there. And therefore, so the question, going back to the question, is like always, it's much better to keep your house clean, have a great data structure and stuff like that, because yeah, for once you can do it, but if you don't solve it, that problem will come to bite you in the ass again and again and again and again. So at a certain point you have to go and fix it. Anybody else?
I agree with that, and I thought that the weak foundations are one of the most dangerous issues that we can face, because they are not loud. When there's a failure in the foundations, they break silent. So get at the end is that, so for example, we start with some break on the data schema, some user that has touched something that it should not. Then we start seeing the decrease on the business metrics, and then we start realizing that we have a problem. But when we face it, it's too late probably, and or the problem is too big. So yeah, I would say that it's one of the most dangerous issues.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think we're in a point where the difficulty right now with LM specifically is more to define properly the playground where they can act, and so the latent space in a way where they can take their decisions and where they shouldn't. So the guardrails that we need to build up to have that. And that's very clearly, for example, if you look at people doing web designing or web coding, sorry, and yeah, building an app in one day is very easy. Building a proper app with role-based access control, proper authentication, and everything, and to really roll out the security if you want, all these kind of things, right? That have proper security systems behind. That's quite tough. And the high risk right now is, I think, people that are into cybersecurity or now have a massive opportunity because of that, obviously, because on one hand you have a system, a lot of things are being built in a way not with the standards that you need, but at the same time you can also attack these systems much better now because you have AI, right? So it's a double-sided even situation that it's gonna get worse in that sense. So I think there's certainly a risk in that, and so again, it's more about defining that playground, right, where you want to give that AI the liberty to act, I would say, and to make sure this is purely functional. So it's on us, and I think that's the biggest difficulty that we have having right now. It's how much are we keen to give control to the AI to act on our behalf. I think that's the biggest question.
Yeah, super quick. In the past, or even nowadays, I think that in every single company that is developing something, more enterprise company or whatever, you have like the security department, you have the infra department, the backend developer, the front-end developer. And with AI, we are transforming that paradigm. And now one single person can do everything. So you were mentioning how do you do the authorization, how you're going to do the role-based security, the privilege. So those things, when you are by coding with your ID, you feel that you know about that, but you really don't know. That's the point.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about AI, agentic AI. So for me, it's the most interesting part of the conference, as I am a cybersecurity expert. So where does it genuinely help, and where does it become risky? Agentic AI.
For me, like personal, I'm separating business from personal. Why? Precisely because of cybersecurity. You cannot trust agentic process right now as they are. Why? Because if you give them certain tasks to go into a web page, that web page can have malicious code that can be injected into a prompt and just like fuck up your entire system, right? I'm just using it for really stupid tasks that I really don't want to do myself, and it's really good for that. Like go to certain websites, fill a form for me, or look for discount codes somewhere else. That's really useful. Of course, we talk about development where that is useful, but for instance, agentic browsers, we have forbidden them in our company, and we're pretty pro AI, but we're just not pro agentic because it's still not like the security versus convenience. It's still tipping too much in the convenience part, and security is not solved. So that's why I'm very skeptical about this part, but I really want to make it happen.
Right. So I will. Sorry. Yeah, I completely agree with my colleague. So I just would substitute the word stupid task to structured task. So in the sense that I would say that we can trust AI in the sense agentic AI in very well-structured tasks, with well-defined order rails, so well-defined data access controls. So it's on us what we can let the AI do. So in what's good enough, so yeah, in well-structured tasks. In what's not good enough, on letting them freely go through any tool with all the privilege of all the access. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit back to the playground thing that we were discussing before, no? Is that you have to try to create some boundaries around your agent. I recognize that it's not easy. In my experience, it's not easy. So what I see with customers is that most of them, what they do is they start with an internal business process and not an external business process. So they try to optimize, especially big companies, they are super slow doing things, right? They have to, I don't know, they have to create the design, implement this, call this department, all those processes that are super slow and they require a lot of time and effort. It's very easy to optimize with an agent. If you think about it, it's not like you are putting your customer data at risk. It's like it's just an internal process that it might fail or it might not be optimal, but in most of the cases, it's going to be super efficient. So what I'm saying is that most of the companies, they start with this kind of use cases, and then slowly they move to something that it can be exposed to other, to the external customers.
I have a question that it's not scheduled here, but I have to ask you, what's your opinion about open cloud, and what is so controversial?
I have very good experience. My open cloud committed suicide the other day. No, just kidding. It's what I was going about 5 minutes earlier. It's basically convenience versus security. A lot of people are just installing them on their own Mac, letting it run free on the WhatsApp and stuff like that. All of a sudden, their contacts receive messages saying like you hit your API quota limit, stuff like that. And that's on the safe side. I went the hardcore security side. I hired a virtual computer, a Hetzner, put it in a Docker container, did like a tunnel VPN to access it through my Mac and stuff like that. Created a Telegram for it, WhatsApp for it, stuff like that, GitHub for it. And it had like a small configuration problem, and I get it to do some tasks. At a certain point, I said like, fuck it, this is too complicated. I'm just going to give it a little bit more permissions, because I always operate on the least permission principle, which is how you should go about it. It's like, no, you can't do anything, but I'm going to give you permission for this task. When you complete it, you just revoke that permission, right? But you have to be a little bit technical to do that. So the point is like, I did that. I said like, I told it to fix itself. It just like completely erased the Docker container. So basically it just fucked itself over. And end of the story. So the point with OpenCloud is basically just, now jokes aside, is it went viral precisely because it was very convenient. It was no restrictions whatsoever. It was a beta tool. On the wizard configuration, say like, this tool is actually dangerous. It doesn't say this tool is controversial. It doesn't say this tool can like do some malfunction. It says it's dangerous. That's the word with a nuclear sign, right? So you should go, a little bit tiptoeing around it. Point being is only use it if you know what you're doing, because it can really do some stuff. I don't want to be extremely populist. I know there's been a lot of sensationalism with, this open cloud went and spent like $5,000 on something I didn't intend it to do and stuff like that. That's mostly for the press. Probably it's just somebody with an AI generating stuff for LinkedIn and trying to go viral, probably just accomplishing it. I'm not buying into that. I'm just saying like it's just another tool. You can do 90% or 95% of what people are doing with OpenCloud with Cloud Work and stuff like that. And other tools are already out there, much more secure and a little bit more thought out and less potentially nuclear.
So I'm just going to ask the first question, like, how many of you know what OpenCloud is? Okay, that's great. For example, Cloud Code is, it is a system that is constantly on and is always proactive in doing tasks. So basically, it always has tasks. It always has a goal. It doesn't turn off, in a way. What does it mean? If you don't have anything to do, you're going to find something to do. So that's why I think it's also very risky in that sense. And I agree with everything you've said. Nonetheless, I think I think there's a very valuable aspect of OpenCloud, and that is the system behind it of always being turned on in the system and being proactive and being for you there the whole time taking decisions, obviously it's very risky. It really is, but it gives us an insight of how the future might be. I think that's a little bit of the perspective, in a sense that, yeah, cloud code, you always ask for tasks, right? Or you can even, you can queue tasks and everything, obviously, and you can parallelize tasks and everything. But it's not always on. Like, this is really a system that has a pulse and it has like background tasks and everything, and it's constantly running behind you to achieve your goals. If your goal is in OpenCloud to have world domination, it will try to do everything just so you get your world domination in a way. So it's quite interesting to see like how these systems evolve in a way. I think it's a very cool playground if you do it in sandboxes, obviously. And I think it's with very limited access to tools, but it certainly gives us an insight of where this is going to without all the risky stuff, I would say. Let's try that.
I got something else. I don't know how many of you are suffering from AI burnout. Raise your hand. For me, AI burnout is I'm able to do so much stuff that I know I will never be able to complete. Yeah. But at least I'm just starting it. 5 years ago, it was like, I don't know how to do this, therefore I'm not starting this project. Now it's like, I feel like superhuman, so I start a lot of things, I don't finish a single one of them. The thing is, like, if I am already experiencing AI burnout without a proactive tool, imagine how far can it go like that? Because I have the feeling that sometimes I'm just filling my schedule with stuff that's nice to have, but not really critical. It was like, oh, I know I can do it with ChatGPT, I will do it. I will do it just because it's cheap and fast to do it, and it can provide some returning, like interesting return on the investment. But had I not done it, it wouldn't change my business. But now, if you get something like that, that you have the pressure constantly of, if I don't give it the right task, it will do something else, and it can go like really crazy. That creates the task of generating lots of work. Even come to think, if you're managing a team and you're too busy to give them meaningful tasks, you're too busy just like giving them backlog tasks because you don't have time to think through what's the best task to delegate to them. That's more or less the same pattern I'm seeing there, and that's why I think it's at a certain point it's got diminishing returns if you don't really have a strategy for it.
I didn't know the concept about burnout,
yeah.
AI burnout.
I'd like to think I made that, but
yes, I understand a lot of things about me, so this is a good concept. We are running out of time because we have to finish at 8 o'clock, but do you have any questions? Because I have a lot of questions. So maybe you want to ask them some questions right there.
So you mentioned privacy, you mentioned security, and we don't need to revisit OpenCloud, but do you think that, we were saying this differently, a panel 2 days ago on Gen AI was asking about how to limit all the different possibilities that could pop up from differences in prompt injection or input. And I'm wondering if water is a good metaphor, and how to constrain, what constraints to use in a Gen AI situation to avoid certain problems from subtle differences in inputs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
I think it's about how you define code rails that are soft limits and hard limits, basically. And I would say, I see it as that perspective, in a sense that, for example, there are certain commands that even in a sandbox you don't want an AI to do and that you're just going to forbid. Right? Like, for example, deleting data. Like, these are commands, or for example, pushing to your Git. I don't know if you, I don't allow my IDE to do anything of these. Like, I forbid these kind of commands. And those are hard rules, right? Because I've written them, the system is directly not able to do that, right? And I think that's the critical aspect where there's certainly still many processes where you need to put your hand in deterministically in a way, so not fully giving access to the AI to decide for every choice. And I think that's a difficulty right now. Like, where do you want the AI to take the choice of the decision which tools to use, and where you don't allow that, right? So, and I think, so we're lucky enough that we work with agentic workflows, so it's not pure, there's always a final goal and objective to reach in a way, so that makes it quite easy. But I understand your question in a way, if I give full access to everything, and this very open goal and objective, how do you limit that? I think that's certainly one of the difficulties, and that's why I'm coming back to the main part. Like after the difficulty nowadays is that we humans have so much context of processes, of interactions, of people that we're not able many times to just explicitly mention as context in AI. And the time that it takes to put it down, that's the that's a difficult task. But and so much time and so much effort, and to find all these corner cases and everything. So I always suggest always try to be secure, try to be as specific as possible, and try to minimize your playground in a way. Because still, I see in very the more specific the workflow it is, the more successful it will be. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to add on that, basically an agent is basically an application, right? So when we are developing applications, we are taking care of security in the different layers. So with an agent, we have to do the same. So basically, if an agent is accessing to your data, you need to put guardrails in place when it's accessing to your data. But it's the same when you have let's say a traditional application. You log in and you can see, I can see your data and you can see my data. That's a security breach. That is the same that is happening with an agent. An agent can do prompt injection and can say, okay, I'm Miguel or I'm Matthias and show me my data. That is like, the paradigm is very similar, especially for data. But then in the different levels it's the same. For example, when you expose tools to do different things to an agent, you can define in these tools, is a read-only tool, or it's not a read-only tool, or it's going to require an authorization or not, an ID token. So it's basically the same like architectural framework that we have been using forever for applications. We need to have that in mind. There are changes, it's not the same, they are creative, they can like try to find things, but then is when you have to put all this playground, guardrails, context limitation in place.
Do you have any questions? Yes, right there.
So I think that where I have a bit of AI burnout is I hear a lot about productivity gains. I hear a lot about, okay, you can do all the things that we don't want to do, but what is the thing that really excites you? Like, I don't feel like I care enough about that.
If you have a problem with AI burnout, I have it as well, but we can talk. Like, we're talking about it openly. You're not alone. No, definitely. Just go on Twitter and LinkedIn and just mute all the thread boys. They've been raving about the next model every week and 10 stuff you have to do. It's like, come on. What's your job, right? No, I'm really excited about certain things. Like, for instance, going back to coding. Like, I'm a software developer myself, but I stopped coding actively 15 years ago when I transitioned to pre-sales in my previous company, and then when I created MarsBased 12 years ago, I decided to take up the role of CEO. So therefore, I'm doing business development, right? The wrong kind of development. And doing sales and marketing and stuff like that, and public speaking, all this boring stuff. And I really want to go back to coding because I'm an introvert myself. And going back to coding after this gap of 15 years where I have been completely outdated and deprecated because things have changed so rapidly in these 15 years is really freaking exciting. Even more so because I see other people who are trying to get into it and they're like, yeah, I can do it, but I can't get this far. I'm like, yeah, I still have an edge because I know things I can solve it here because I'm an engineer, I'm a developer, so I can, I can think a little bit outside of the box. So let me give you an example, for instance, and I don't want to be very long about this, but one of my friends was talking some problem with their website, and was like, I'm just using Claude, sorry, not Claude, it was Cursor, and he was sending like all the context of the project, and at the time I didn't even understand context windows and blah blah blah, so I was also setting the context. But I thought, okay, so actually there was an element not appearing on the website, and by taking a look at the code, Cursor was not able to understand why, right? So I said, how about we, instead of sending the code, you give it the actual HTML it outputs. Maybe that gives us a little bit more of context, right? And up until that point, it had been running in circles. So the solution was not in the HTML code. But basically it was like, oh, it gave 2 or more options that were not there in the first place, because the only context it had was like the Ruby on Rails code, right? By now giving it a little bit more, it's like, oh, maybe it's these other things. Like, why didn't you tell me in the first place? Why didn't you tell me to actually give me the HTML code? It was not there. Then we said, oh, maybe, how about we share a screenshot of what actually happens? And it was not there. Why? Because we gave it the screenshot only of the content. The solution was in the Chrome extensions. It was using AdBlock. AdBlock was blocking the social sharing buttons, and because that element was not there, the CSS was saying, after that element, you do this. But because it was not there, that condition was not triggered, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, it's like, I came up with that, not the fucking AI. So that's why developers, we still have an edge, right? And that's why I'm still excited. Someday I will generate a movie, or now I'm excited about music generation because I have a band. And being able to generate punk rock songs in Catalan is fucking amazing. Thanks to Google, actually. The latest model understands and speaks and sings in Catalan perfectly.
Yes.
That's one thing. For me, the most exciting part of the AI, apart of the creativity and everything, is the time to value. So things that in the past would take forever, everything, every process, now it can be super quick. And that iteration process, because we are going to fail. For sure, we are going to fail the first time. We also failed in the past, but it took 6 months. Now it can take hours. So you fail, you iterate, you improve. And that, for me, is one of the key things of AI.
I have to say, like, I like your question a lot because it makes me nostalgic in some sense of when you programmed, like, for example, something and the base, like, you start up and you think about system design and everything, how I'm going to build this, and you want that code to start well so it scales well, right? And the thought process behind, I really value that. I think that still happens, to be honest. I think AI still takes a lot of bad decisions when building up systems. Most of the time it's very expensive and way over the top. So I don't know if you have had that experience, but our experience has been very much that, putting queues, Kafkas to everything, basically, and stuff like that, Redis to everything. So yeah, and sorry if anybody from Redis or anything is here. But yeah, so in that sense, so I feel like in a way there's still an edge. So I feel there's still like in a way that we add value more on a design aspect of how we want to do those systems. And at the end of the day, why did you start your program? I mean, I think that's one of the questions that everyone has to ask themselves. And I think for me, it's because there's a challenge and I want to solve that in a way, and I want to build something, right? Like, it's all about building. And I think AI speeds us up in that sense. And especially it gives us the entry to new elements that in the past we could have never gone into, because you're so much faster. The learning curve is so much faster than in the past.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I agree with my colleagues, and I just wanted to add that if you want extra motivation, and if you think that all the problems are solved with AI, try to deploy them. Get your test environment with your solved problem.
Local host.
Yeah. And try to deploy. So I would say that there's still a lot of challenges, even if we think that all the solutions are solved. For a lot of use cases, they are solved. But for just as an example, parsing documents, extracting content from documents is a super well-known problem. There are a lot of OCR models, even LLMs are parsing. We were implementing in our company something similar, and we were considering a lot of things like, okay, we can parse images, we can parse PDFs, all the extensions available. We can parse typed documents, we can parse handwritten documents. We were thinking about how the LLMs can interpret checkboxes so that we can extract data in all the possible formats that you can imagine. And then we deployed, and then the first user that tried uploaded a page, rotated. So, and it was not solved. So we haven't found a single OCR model that solves this issue with the rotated pages. So not all the problems are solved. So you could find things when simply deploying.
Okay, we are finished? Yes? So don't worry if you have any question, because now we have a very fantastic DJ with music, and we have food. Yes, you you with the music. And now we have food, drinks, so you can stay here and talk with them if you have any questions. So thank you for this conversation, and thank you for your thoughts and for your ideas. Thank you all of you for coming here, and that's it. Let's enjoy the music and the food. Thank you.